Okay, so I'm going to show you how to properly firmware upgrade your Mikrotik router the safe way, and also how to get a good set of copy of backup files. Okay, so what you want to do is you go to Files, you go to Backup. I click Don't Encrypt because I don't need mine encrypted. You may. I'm going to enable this. I'm going to name this Backup Test 1, and I backup. This then creates the file Backup Test 1, and you pull this over onto your desktop. You now have a backup, but the backup file is only good if you're going to restore to the same model of router and the same major OS version. So if you're going to use another router, say this one, say your model blew up and you need a temporary one, this backup file isn't going to help you. It sort of will, but probably not. And if you change your firmware to a major upgrade, it's also not going to work well, if at all. So a backup file is limited in its use. So what you also want to grab is you want to grab an export. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export, E-X-P-O-R-T, file, F-I-L-E, equals, no spacing on any of this, export test 1. Okay, now what this is going to do is this is going to export every setting in a way that can be used later. I'm also going to export another version of this. I'm going to export compact, C-O-M-P-A-C-T, file equals export test 2. Okay, so now if we go back to files, we have two more files. We have the export test 1 and export test 2. Drag those over to the desktop. Now, why are these useful? So I'm going to rename this from a .rsc to a .txt. Yes, I do want to change it. This will then allow me to open it in Notepad or whatever your document editor is, and this then has all the commands individually. You can actually take these commands, copy paste directly from this list, and add these commands into any router. You have to make sure that you change things, like for example the interfaces might be different on the new router, but this allows you to take individual sections and slowly put everything back into the other router so that you've got everything. And this, so I prefer the backup is quick and easy, but the export is the one that's really important because it really does have all the settings. Compact, the export compact only has things in it that have changed. Whoops, I forgot to change that. So Windows is now going to annoy me. But anyway, so the compact version just has the items that have changed. But sometimes Mikrotik doesn't always update that, so you don't always get every setting in compact. So I always get both just in case. So now at this point, I've got a real backup file that's good for this model and this firmware. I've got the export files so that if I want to go get individual settings and apply them to a different router, I have all of those. Okay, so now we've got good backups. So now what we want to do, we've also got in the files section, we have the backups here too, so we could in theory restore directly from a backup that's sitting in the file section on the router. So now we're going to do the really good part. So now what we want to do is go to partition. There are two partitions. I've labeled mine backup and normal. You have to expand this little area between these two to see which one is really active. So this one's is active right now and running. That's what AR means. Okay, so I'm running right now on partition number 1. If you have not created a second partition, then you click repartition and you click 2 and you create a second partition. Not all routers will allow you to create more than one partition, but the bigger ones will. So then what you do is on your active running partition, the one you know works, you copy this. So I'm going to click copy to, and I'm going to send it to the other one, the backup one. So partition 0, which is this one. So start. It's going to put the OS and everything over there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say save config to, and I'm also going to put that on the partition 0. So now what I've done is I've copied everything in this partition over to this one. So now I have a duplicate. So if one fails, I've got one as backup. This is really handy for a lot of different reasons. To access, if you do have a completely bricked router, the only way to boot from the other partition, though, is you will need a console access from RS-232 in order to choose the other partition. So, so that part's kind of annoying and kind of sucky, but it is there. You can then just simply boot to the other partition. So now that I've backed up the files, I have the export files, and I've copied it to the other partition. Now what I can do is I can now go and do system and packages and check for updates. I have the current version, but we're going to pretend we don't. So what I would then do is I would then go upgrade, download, and install, and you go okay, and then it goes off and it does the download and install, and it will then reboot. That way what will happen is on the partitions, you copied over your known good one as your backup, and now you're upgrading the one you're in. So if you had any reason to go back to the other partition, you can always go back to it. How you do that is on the partition, you double click the partition, and it'll say activate at the bottom here. So when you click activate, you go over to that partition. You activate, then it reboots, and you're on the other partition, and you can flip between them. And that's settings and OS and everything. So that would allow you, if the new one, like if you're doing beta firmware and the new one just sucked, then you could go back to your previous version just by simply activating it. And then you could copy the backup, copy that to this one again, and then you'd have both on the same, and then you could go from there. So this is the proper way to kind of do backups as you go, the full complete way to do backups as you go on Mikrotik.